Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It is Sunday morning. We got some rain showers off and on in the vicinity. Got a cup of coffee here, but it's reading, I don't know if you can see that, it's reading low. Got my buddy Scout here. He's a little dirty. He was on a pre-run on the trails with me, and he loves to just wallow in mud holes. But he did hop in the pond. He's got himself pretty well cleaned off there. Okay, today's topic. Two of the hottest bikes in my opinion for dual sporting. Of course, one is newer but has a legacy attached to it, of course. And the other one has been around for a few generations now. That is the KTM 350exc-f right here. This is a 2024. And of course, the new DRZ-4s. These two are very closely related. Now I did the woods loop, the KLX 300 against the 4S. Those two are a little farther apart as far as comparison. These two are very close. It's just some specs kind of put them apart. So we'll kind of look at these two here and go over some things. Then I will suit up and we'll get out on the bikes and take them for a rip here. So let's get into it here a little bit. Of course, the 4S, weight-wise, we have the 350 and 4S. You got about a 70-pound difference is in the weight category in these two bikes. And you don't necessarily feel it when you're going through the woods. It's not a major factor, but if you got to pick the bike up, move the bike, or if you're stuck in a little bit of a squirrely situation, you're going to feel that weight. So that's one big factor. Horsepower, these two bikes are very close. Now, I didn't put these on a dyno myself. I'm just pulling up what is online, but online, they're about 1.5 to 2 horsepower difference, which the horsepower edge goes to the 400. I believe it's around, this is going to vary, but if you punch it up, this usually comes up around 38 horsepower, and this is usually like in the 35, 36.5 horsepower range. But the 4S, of course, I've only owned for a couple months, but I have 20 plus years on the 400 itself, the prior model. And these 350s, I have owned every generation of these 350s from 14 up. And the weight is what kills the 400. It might have a couple extra horsepower, but that's basically all negated with the 70 pounds of extra weight. Because this bike feels like it has more horsepower as you're riding it through the woods. It definitely feels like it has more than this bike. And another thing that we can touch on that turns a lot of people off is basically your maintenance type schedules for these bikes. Because the Japanese bikes are much more lenient and probably in the long run more reliable. I mean, the valve train, you can look this stuff all up, but like the valve check on this is like 12,000 to 15,000 miles. These, I believe they recommend you to do it. I don't know the hours specifically, but I'm going to say it's in like the 2,000 mile range. I don't know the hours. I'd have to look it up. Of course, you have to go on the digital owner's manual on the KTMs because they don't give you a manual now. Oil changes on the KTM, I do them every 10 hours or so. I believe they might recommend 15 hours. If you have questions on that, I can look it up and I will answer you in the comments. This oil change after the initial one on the 4S, I believe, is 3,000 miles. Guys can correct me on that, or I can look it up. But don't let the maintenance on a KTM 350 scare you if that's what you're leaning towards, because the most miles I've ever put on one that I bought new was 3,500, and the valves were still in spec on that bike. And there's plenty of guys in forums that have 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 miles on these 350s, and the valves have always been in spec. So don't let that scare you. Just maintain it and change the oil and keep up with the maintenance and stuff like that, and it will be a good bike. Okay, another elephant in the room is price. The DRZ-4s, people believe it is already overpriced. I don't. I think it's, for what you're getting, it's worth the $9,000. The KTM, though, is $12,600 in 2025. So that is $3,600 more than the 4S. And for that price in the KTM, you could pick up two of the 300s. You can get a Honda and a Cowie, two Cowies or two Hondas, for the price of this one bike. Is the KTM worth it? I don't know. I mean, it does have top of the line components on it, but just being a dual sport guy, I think you're better off going this route. And you know, if you don't even want to spend that, go with the 300s. That being said, when these bikes are marked down and left over, you can basically get on one of these at the right dealer. You can get out the door on one of these for around 10 grand, 10.5 if you wait till the next model year comes out and they're on leftover. So don't let that scare you. And around here, my dealers already have these down to $8,500 plus tax and tags on these 4Ss. I've seen other people comment where their dealers are down to like $79.99 on these 4Ss, trying to sell them. Appearance-wise, I mean, they both look good. The suspension on these two bikes is very, very, very similar. I will tell you that right now. I actually probably lean towards, I like the feel of the suspension on the 4S a little bit more, probably. But they're Scout and photo bombing again. But similar suspension, very similar, very good on both bikes. This is the stiffest ever on this 2024, is the stiffest suspension that has ever been on these 350s. My 17 was probably the best suspension that was on the 350 series. This, they really stiffened it up, I guess, making it a little better for guys that want to maybe hit the track, the motocross track on these bikes, and it would still be sufficient, but yet you could still hit rough, gnarly single track if you turned everything way down. Now, as far as my setup on these bikes for doing my run today, tires, AMS Bite MX, I will be running about 6 pounds of air. This has the Trackmaster 760s on it, tubeless in the rear, which will be down to about 4 pounds. So this bike is going to have an advantage today for sure, because we got a little bit of rain, so everything is slick. The roots and the rocks are slick. There's a little bit of mud. So this bike is going to have a little bit of an advantage here. I would prefer to do it when everything is dry, but the weather just hasn't been cooperating. Both bikes, guys, get on my case because I'm running them not stock gearing. Down one tooth on the front, down one tooth on the front. So they are both geared down on the front in this test. They all have the typical mods, different turn signals. I got fork guards on them, skid plates on both bikes, handlebar risers on both. That's the way I roll. They both have ROX risers, 2-inch on there, hand guards, simple stuff like that. Tail ends are both tidied up right there. So that's my opinion. And this bike is gonna fit somebody that is more, if you're going to lean more towards wanting to do light adventure and be on the highway a little bit more and less hard single track, that's your bike. If you're a guy that basically loves, even wants to race off-road in some off-road series races and tight, gnarly single track on this bike, but still be able to do a little bit of light adventure work, this is definitely your bike 100%. And like I said, that's at the other end of the spectrum. They're going to be, that's going to be the best bike in its class. This is going to be the best bike as far as if you want to do the tight stuff, but yet still do a little bit of light adventure. This is if you're more towards the dual sport and more towards a lot of light adventure and not as much single track. That being said, I'm going to hop on these babies and we'll give them a rip. And these lap times, if you watch my last video, run right close to 5 minutes for each bike. And this one did a 4:55 the last time, but the trails were dry, so I'm sure the time's going to be up a little bit today. So I'm going to get throw some boots on, helmet, gloves, and we'll hop on these bikes and we're going to go ahead and get on them and give them a rip here and see how they do. Stay tuned. All right, we're at my typical starting point here. Little Thistle. We're on the KTM. I'm gonna fire it up. I'm gonna hit the start. Hopefully my glove hits it and it kicks on. I'm gonna put it in gear and we're gonna rip. And like I said, keep in mind today, the dirt in the woods is wet and the roots are slimy. So that could hinder things a little bit, but we're gonna see what we can do here. Let's rock. Gotta get it in neutral. Okay. There we go. The old girl fired up. Okay. Always a little slip. We've got this ditch here that people remembered. Roots. It's slick from the rain. Have to jump that log, but it broke. No dust today. Those diversions are, you can't see those diversions, how they're pretty hard. Oh, I gotta go over that freaking wooden bridge there too. Is wet. That is nerve-wracking. Hard on the brakes. Got this goofy ditch. Oh, baby. I wish you guys could see how rough that hill is. This is slightly off camber, but hard to tell.
so light and nimble. It's like you're on a mountain bike. This is my stopping point. Stop! Okay, I hit that at 435. I couldn't see it because it's tilted over. The sun was hitting it. So that was 435. All right. We're at 437.81. It was like 435 in high when I tried to first hit it. So what I'm going to do is just round it to 436, and we'll get set up and get on the 4S. All right, something I wanted to mention. I'm going to turn the ABS off on this bike so that it will be kind of matched up with the KTM whenever we do this loop. So no ABS. I'm going to get this thing turned on and we will get ripping here and see what we can do on the 4S here. And both these bikes are stock air box, stock pipe, no modifications to anything on the emission system or motor wise. Let's get to it. Hey, not in neutral. How about that? Okay. Let's get ready. Braking on these bikes is both, it's very similar. Braking, good brakes on both bikes, that's for sure. If you guys pay attention, I'm not a clutch user. I will lug a bike out of a turn instead of ripping on the clutch and using the clutch. Oh, that's tough. You can't see it, but that's a big washout ditch onto the tube track there. Tough to see it. This bike is a little harder to flip around on these turns than the KTM. I mean, the KTM is definitely more light and flickable in here, but it's not a massive difference. Oh, Greenbrier's grabbed the bar. I'm trying to stand and sit basically where and when I did on the KTM, but it's tough to work that out. That they both handle those diversions really well. Boy, that bridge is slick. I got to go hard on the brakes here on both bikes. Let's hit this bitch. They both have plenty of power to destroy that hill. Tell you what, suspension wise, I'm going to tell you this DRZ I think is a little bit better. It might be because, Jesus, those things, man, those roots are slippery. It's probably because of the extra weight. This suspension, where I have it tuned, feels a little more plush than the KTM. Woo! Almost went down there. Maybe pushing a little too hard. Four 36.86. So with me rounding it up, basically 1 second difference. Stop and have a chat. All right, well, so what do you guys think? That was basically right about 1 second difference on the Woods loop. Now I will say, you heard me grunt a little bit on the DRZ-400 because that was basically a tire thing. The Track Masters have much better grip in the wet stuff than the AMS Bite. So that's what I'm contributing to my little bit of a loss of control in a couple places, like with the front end washing out a little bit, was because of those Track Masters being on the KTM. And one thing I want to point out, when I was on this, for you 4S guys, when I went up that hill, I had turned the ABS completely off. When I went up that gnarly hill climb, was bouncing all over the place, that ABS by itself turned back on. Both tires, when I hit that single track to the left and back down to the house, I looked down and my ABS was completely activated again, front and rear. So keep that in mind when you're riding. I'm not sure what went on there, but I don't think that's supposed to happen, but it definitely did turn it off when I come up that gnarly hill climb. So like I said, with these two bikes, it's going to be up to what you do. The KTM definitely feels more at home in the woods doing what I just did. But you can see the 4S will do that same stuff, but it's definitely, I'm going to say, I don't want to say funner. They're both the same amount of fun, but it's a little easier on the KTM, and it adds to your fun experience being on the KTM. And plus the KTM, you can get much rougher, hard enduro type stuff, and it's gonna work just fine. That's where you hit the limitations of the 4S, is when you get in very, very hard, gnarly stuff, mainly because you got the heavier bike when you get into there. I'm not saying it won't doing it. If you're a big guy, you're stout, you're 250 pounds, and you can lift any type of weight that don't affect you, then that bike, you can take it in the gnarly stuff. But definitely edge goes to 4S for all around single track, to doing a little bit of light adventure and being on the highway more, whereas the KTM goes to the more of a hardcore off-road, maybe hit the MX track occasionally, and also go to some very light adventure work and a little bit of highway work. And it's going to be a price thing. Like I said, the KTM is double the price of the 300 series bikes, the 4-strokes, the CRF and the KLX, $3,600 more
than the DRZ-4s. And of course the 4S is a few thousand more than the 300 series. But it's just all what you're after. To me, still the best value for a bike that's gonna do everything. And it's, my mind has been this way for 20 years. The Suzuki 400 series is the best all-around bike on the planet. If you're a dual sport guy and you want to buy one bike to do literally everything you would want to do on it, single track, adventure work, you're, in my opinion, you're never going to beat the Suzuki 400 series. And the 4S is definitely a big step up from the prior generation of the 400. So do what you want with that, guys and gals. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to comment down below. If you have any questions, please ask. I will answer, or I'll try to look up the answer if there's something I missed in the video and you have a question about. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Please, if you're watching the video, hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing. So like, share. We'll see you in the next video. We'll be getting out, of course, more on the dual sports and maybe doing a few other things. See ya.